Kusambola. I'm Chencho Dorji, and on behalf of my team, Lodrey, Zangmo, and Phub Tshewang, I'll be presenting on the study that we have conducted to understand the effectiveness of block grant provided to the local governments. Let me start the background by sharing a brief history on how the concept of block grant has evolved in Bhutan. It was in the 9th Five-Year Plan. A decentralized planning technique was adopted by the Planning Commission as its move towards decentralizing the planning approach. To supplement this, the Ministry of Finance in the 10th Five-Year Plan introduced a system of annual grant as a move towards decentralizing the finance. The annual grant was divided into 4 components, namely annual capital grants, current grant, earmark grant, and local resources, and they were allocated with a resource allocation formula. The annual capital grant was further divided into 2 components, namely tied grants for planned activities and untied grants for unplanned activities. 80% of the total budget was allocated to the tied grants and 20% of the budget was allocated to the untied grants. It can be highlighted here that the modality, functionality, and the description of the untied grant is very similar to what is called as block grant right now. Thus, we can say that untied grant in the 10th Five-Year Plan is in fact the introduction of a block grant concept in Bhutan. Since then, various financial models in the form of constituency development grant, Gyeok development grant, and Zangmo development grant were inducted and implemented. And these grants shared similar concepts to block grants, but is not really a block grant in its actual sense. In 2019, the Ministry of Finance modified the existing annual grant system by enhancing the formula of the financial resource allocation to the local governments and also simplifying the annual grant into 2 components from the earlier 4. And the 2 components are annual grants and current grants, which is known as a block grant in the current context. It is very interesting to note that while we use the term block grant, but none of the government documents use the term block grant and only mention the term annual grant. So it can be concluded that in our context, annual grant is a block grant. Now, to touch upon the problem statement and the objective of the study, as kindly aware, block grant is relatively a new form of intergovernmental fiscal transfer, and a major portion of the total national budget is being allocated to the local governments. So we wanted to understand if this form of fiscal reform is effective. Towards this, the aim is to analyze the pattern and trends in the utilization of block grant by the Dzongkhaks and Gyeoks. For the Dzongkhaks, we targeted the fiscal year 20 to 21, and for the Gyeok is 2019 to 2021. This is because the block grant has been introduced in the Dzongkhaks only since the last 1 year, and for the Gyeok it has been running 2 years. The objective of our study is to understand the viability of block grant as an engine for the development and to determine the area of investment of allocated block grant. Basically, we want to know if block grant is an effective fiscal reform, and also understand what are the priorities of our local government and which sector they are investing. In the literature review, we try to look at how did the concept of block grant originate and where it is being applied. And we also looked at the definition and how Bhutan considers block grant. As you can see from the presentation here, the definition of block grant in Bhutan is little different from the definition that is generally described. And with regards to advantage and disadvantage, there is a mixed feeling. With reference to methodology, an analytical research was conducted using secondary data, and we used a mixed mode approach whereby the financial data was assessed quantitatively and the meeting data was assessed qualitatively. Literature review was also conducted and a critical evaluation was done at the end. The secondary data of budget allocation expenditure was collected from the Department of Budget, and the minutes of meeting of Zangmo Sobdu was collected from the Department of Local Governance. Overall, we had a data of 2 Excel sheets which consist around 10,000 plus rows and 10,000 plus rows and 24 columns each. And in terms of the minutes, we had 20 compiled books which was written in Dzongkha. For the purpose of sampling, a random sampling approach has been used in this study. But before a random sampling approach could be used, quota sampling was used to divide the country into 3 parts, that is Western, Central and Eastern. Further, based on random sampling, different Dzongkhaks, namely Samtsi, Chuka, Paro was selected from the western part. Wangdi, Tongsa and Tsirang was selected from the central part, and Lhuntsi and Pema Gasel was selected from the eastern part. All the Gyeoks within the selected Dzongkhaks were included in the study. A total of 87 Gyeoks were selected under the 8 Dzongkhaks. In terms of tools, Max QDA Pro 2020 was used to develop word cloud, and Microsoft Excel 2019 was used to analyze the data. The graph here presents the comparison of allocated and utilized block grant by Dzongkhak administration for the financial year 20 to 2021. From the graph, you can notice that the allocation and the utilization is very close, except for Pema Gasel Dzongkhak. The first table represents the comparison of allocated and utilized block grant for various sectors by the Gyeoks. And from this table, you can notice that agriculture sector receives the highest budget and also has the highest utilization, followed by religion and culture sector. The next table is on the mean budget utilization percentage of the Gyeoks and Dzongkhaks for the fiscal year 2019 to 2021. And from here you can see that the utilization is above 85%. Upon consultation with the financial expert, it has been understood that utilization above 60% is supposed to be a good utilization. Then the word clouds for both the Dzongkhak and the Gyeok point out that construction is a priority sector for both the Gyeoks and the Jongkaks. In conclusion, as already pointed out in the graphs, the agriculture sector is the top developmental priority for both Jongkak and the Gyeok, and it is followed by the religion and cultural sector. Major activity is hardware and less on software, basically, as we notice that the construction is more prominent in both the Jongkak and the Gyeok, whereas there is less expenditure on capacity buildings. In terms of construction for the Jongkak, particularly since 2019 and 20 did not have a block grant approach, there was only 3.6% spent on construction, whereas with the block grant 14.49% was spent by the Jongkak. And from the analysis, it was also realized that the expenditure is only in the permitted sectors and have been effectively utilized, but the efficiency needs to be explored to understand it fully. With this, my presentation comes to an end, and thank you.